tell me when
Okay.
you've hit that. Great, there we go. So thanks everyone for joining us. Today is quite an interesting day, at least the topic, plan and flow. I guess it's interesting because kind of like last week we looked at Teams, which is quite a new product. And didn't have an on-premise version, so to speak. I think Plan and Flow are equally new and exciting. I think I'm really excited about Flow. What Flow really allows you to do is start to automate business processes. So it's really around creating some efficiencies. So, you know, I've kind of said this in the beginning of the talk, where your data is shared across all these applications, it really beautiful things can happen. So I'm sure today we're going to see what some of those beautiful things are, how we can create flows to do tasks that we usually spend a lot of manual time doing. We can potentially automate them. So welcome everyone. Over to you, Eric. Tell us what we've got planned today.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Yeah, great to have you all here again. Again, I think we're hitting another interesting topic, as we had last week when we really dived into Teams. And let me jump right into the presentation, and we'll then kick off, and we'll talk about Flow and Planner. Okay, so really, I think expanding on what we spoke about last week in terms of team, or 2 weeks ago in terms of Teams, we really spoke about creating efficiency around team collaboration and how teams communicate and store documents together. Now, in terms of Flow is about handling that kind of the information process flows within your organization. We all have things that we do, and organizations have business processes that many of the time we as individuals become the glue that brings that all together. We do the integration as the people, and so a lot of our time as employees within businesses, a lot of our time gets sucked up with us having to do manual integration. So we get some data in, and then we have to capture it somewhere, or we get a task, and then we have to perform a specific action. So we do a lot of the interaction, and that's really what I really want to talk about today in terms of what Flow allows you to do in terms of handling a lot of that information flow that happens within the organization for yourself, and perhaps even for the organization, so you can improve how the organization processes data and information, as well as how you yourself process data and information. Okay, now Microsoft Flow sits within the business application platform, and the business application platform is, as its name states, is a platform of services that allow you to build something unique to your organization. So as an example, Power BI, which we're going to be focusing on in 2 weeks' time in our last session, is really about building unique reporting and dashboards to do analytics and business intelligence within your organization, where you've got live dashboards, live reporting. So taking a lot of maybe the what's the word I'm trying to think of now? But a lot of the manual work that goes into reporting currently with regards to Excel and some other tools, and automating a lot of that reporting in the cloud through Power BI. So we'll be doing a lot of that next week. So that's a platform, because Microsoft has given you the tools to create the reports. It's up to you to go and build something which is unique for your organization. Similar kind of thing happens with Flow. Microsoft's given you the tools around the platform, Flow. You now need to build and create a workflow that handles a specific business process, or handles the flow of information within your organization to help you and to help your team work more efficiently. And likewise for Power Apps and Forms, Microsoft's giving you a platform to create both apps and unique forms, where forms will help you to capture information, and Power Apps will help users to consume and interact with information on their mobile devices, or on any device that they're on, for that matter. But all of these form part of the business application platform. and work together really nicely to get they work really nicely together. So leveraging all of these in terms of Office 365 can create a really powerful solution within your organization. Now, most business integration challenges are met with a single solution. And what is that solution? Well, it's us, the people. So if a business has a challenge as to how to perform specific tasks, how to let's say integrate one thing with another, a lot of the time we as the people do those tasks. And I'm not trying to get at the fact that we minimize our role within the business. I think our role is maximized in this space, but we all want to work more efficiently and effectively. And because all of these tasks and notifications and files and things are integrated by us, we have to do that work. It means we're unable to do work that really creates efficiency within the business. So driving productivity, connecting with customers, being more let's say having a better work-life balance. So all of those things we can't do because we've got all of these systems which we've got to integrate for our job. We've got to bring those systems together and make them work. So if we could take some of that workload off of our shoulders and make that process handled within the systems, within Office 365, within the cloud, well, that allows us to then be more efficient, to create real business value out of leveraging our time. So we can both save time and we can create additional business value. Now, what is Microsoft Flo? The Microsoft Flo is a way for you to automate tasks and workflows across services. Okay, so things like when you get a notification with an attachment, so you get an email with an attachment, you need to go and store that attachment or share that file with a specific group of people, or even create a task out of that. A lot of us would work within email, and we maybe use email rules to do that. But the problem with email rules is they're limited to Outlook. They don't integrate into any of the other systems which we need to work with. So we need to work in SharePoint or OneDrive or Teams to collaborate and work on documents. But couldn't we automate the process of, okay, well, we're receiving emails on a weekly basis, which has updated customer information or client information or something like that, bank statements, etc. We want to store that automatically in a place where either we can decide how we want to name it and access it later, right? So it gets automatically stored in a place where we can easily find it, or we want to automatically share it with people without us having to do that task of sharing. We could automate that workflow, get the email, it goes and takes the attachment, stores it in a specific place in Teams, and notifies the team. You know, hey everyone, the updated report has just been sent to us. Here it is. Okay, so it might not seem like a lot, but just automating those things, which maybe take us a couple of minutes every single day, creates a massive time saving. It's a massive amount of time saving in the long term. Okay, so that's what we can do in terms of automating those tasks and workflows. Okay, so what makes up a flow? And when we dive into the demo and I showcase Flow, I'll obviously talk about these two things. But Flow is made up of two specific areas. So first we have what starts the flow, is called a trigger, and then what actions the flow takes, okay, which are called actions. Now the triggers can be one of either three things. They can be data events. So these are automated. If something happens, so if a new email is received or a new item is created or a new document is added, it will automatically perform a couple of actions. Okay, so those are data events. It detects a change in a system and automatically does a specific set of actions on it. Then we could have manually triggered. And manually triggered could be like a button. We can configure a button on our mobile device that goes ahead, and if we click the button, or if we press the button on our phone, it's going to perform a couple of actions. Okay, this could even be a physical button. A lot of buttons that are IoT devices. Okay, if you know what IoT is, and I'm sure you've heard that buzzword kind of spoken in the market. Okay, so the Internet of Things, an IoT device or a smart device that's connected to the internet. You could buy these buttons, and when you press the button, it integrates with Flo and performs a specific action. So an example of that would be, maybe you have a button in the room that when you press the button, it must turn on the laptop screen, initiate a Teams call, that kind of thing. That kind of manually triggered manual trigger has a couple of actions that it needs to do within the room, and Flo could actually help to achieve those 3 actions that it needs to perform. And then lastly, we have a scheduled trigger. And a scheduled trigger is just a reoccurrence. So maybe we want a specific set of actions to reoccur every hour or every day or every week at a specific time. And so we can configure the schedule to perform those specific actions to our liking. Okay, so those are the 3 triggers. Then we have the
Eric,
actions.
Can
Yes.
I just so basically maybe just to also just create to just clear it up. So what we're saying is a flow is a series of things that happen, and what you've just covered is the triggers. So what actually makes it happen? Is that am I understanding it correct?
Sure. I mean, I could put it in like let's put it in terms of IT. It works like this from a technical perspective, but let's give a practical example for us as human beings. Okay, so when it comes to us, there are specific things that happen. You know, if somebody speaks to us, well, what action are we going to perform? Okay, so somebody speaks to us. We have audio input, technically. Okay, we hear the audio input. Well, the action that we perform from listening to somebody or hearing somebody speak to us is we're going to respond to them in specific ways. Obviously, we might perform multiple actions. So we might, maybe they speak to us in a rude way, so we respond or we perform specific actions in light of that. Okay.
Perfect.
And so the same thing kind of happens in IT. We have specific things that happen within the business environment or the IT environment that then have been set up to perform a couple of actions. So that's always how those work hand in hand. Okay.
Perfect.
So maybe that.
Let's take a look at the actions.
Cool. Okay. So actions can range all the way from simple actions. We've only got two things. So let's say on this first example, the simple one, maybe the trigger was I receive an email that contains, I receive an email from Daniel. Okay, so I receive an email from Daniel. Now what I want to do is for every email that I receive from Daniel, I want to go and create an item in SharePoint. Here's the SharePoint item, and then automatically add that into Power BI so that my Power BI report automatically gets updated. Okay, so I've received input from Daniel in the form of an email, and based on that that input that Daniel has sent to me, Flo is automatically going to do 2 things. It's going to create an item for me in SharePoint, which other people could access if they want to, and it's automatically going to update Power BI so that my report always remains updated. So it's already assisted me in 2 ways. I don't have to manually go to SharePoint and type in all of that data that existed in the email. And secondly, I don't have to go manually to Power BI and refresh the data. Okay, so that can save me quite a lot of time. And in many cases, you want to try and simplify Flo. Okay, so Flo can go from very simple ones that do simple tasks which can have big benefits, all the way to really complicated flows that maybe have 7+ actions. So something happens and then it does, 7 to 10 to 20 different things. Okay, and then those can be built out, and I'll show you the difference between the two, so you can have a look. Okay. Now, in terms of all of these sessions that we're doing, we're obviously at the 5th session in terms of our webinar series. I would say that Flo has probably and I'm thinking of how to say this, or that Flo has probably, especially if you want to go and create complex processes, probably has the steepest learning curve. At least that's what I've experienced at the clients that I've worked with. So a lot of times what creates the complexity is the fact that when an action happens in a business, it's difficult to really identify or to digitize every single step of the process, because a lot of it is still in paper. So how do we really draw this out? So there's a lot of work that needs to go beforehand to kind of draw out or spec out how does this process currently work within our organization. And then when we map it out digitally, we realize, oh wow, there's actually 20 actions that are performed, and we need to create every single action in Flow. So that can create some complexity, but obviously we're here to help you in terms of doing that. And once you've really set up the flow, those steps will automatically be performed going forward. So yes, there might be some initial complexity in generating or creating the flow, but once it's set up, none of those tasks need to be done by us or by the users anymore, because they're done on behalf of the users by the actual flow itself. Okay, so let's dive in and have a look at what Flow is all about. Okay, so I've logged in here to the office.com or the Office 365.
We can't see your screen. We're just seeing the demo of Microsoft Flow.
I wonder why. Okay.
Slide.
A moment.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so I've logged into the office.com portal, and I'm going to go head over to Flow, and we're going to look at a couple of things. And a good place to start for anybody who is maybe interested in firstly learning more about Flow, learning how to create Flow yourself, and then perhaps maybe taking it a step further and looking at, okay, well, I now know how to create maybe simple flows myself using some of the built-in templates and connecting it to my own account and connecting these services together. Maybe I now want to create more complicated like team flows or business process flows. I'll show you how you can go really from a basic approach to taking like baby steps with Flow to something which is maybe a bit more complicated. Okay, because I think that's a good place to start, because Flow can be a big thing to chew on. Okay, and I don't want to overwhelm you in terms of that. Okay, so when we go to Flow and we go to the home page, the easiest thing to look at is first, we could play this video, see how it works. And I'm not going to show you that because I actually want to show you how it works in this session. But there's these 4 collections, I think they've got 5 or 6 now. Yeah, there's 6 collections that you can go and have a look at. And these collections are templates that really help you to do specific things. So here are 11 templates that help your sales team work more effectively. Keep you informed while you're on the go. Improve your productivity. Help to make software development easier if you're a software developer. And so you can go ahead and actually have a look at these. And I'm going to go and have a look at the productivity ones to give you an idea of what are some of the things that Flow can help me to do in terms of improving my productivity. at work or at home. Okay, so the first thing, as it says at the top, get ahead of your workload. Now, one of the things that I think is quite disruptive to us being able to handle our workload at the office is our email attachments, right? And I think we'd all agree with that. We get so many emails on a day-to-day basis, and in amongst all of those emails, some of those emails contain attachments which you might need to look at a later date. But the problem is, if we need to look at them at a later date, we got to use the search function in Outlook to try and find them. And unless we've proactively gone and organized those email attachments in our own specific way inside Office 365, those email attachments may well be difficult to find. Okay, so something that makes it a lot easier is if we're already using OneDrive as our document storage solution, or we're using Dropbox as an example, okay, because this is not only Flo is not only integrated into Microsoft services, it's to try and bring your entire world together and integrate it. Okay, so if I, as an example, take this first one, if I want to save email attachments to a specific folder in OneDrive for Business, I could use this template, which Microsoft has already set up for me, to do that. And a good example of this is maybe you get your account statements, either for your credit card or your bank statements, every single month. Now, you don't necessarily want to have to go to save as on the attachment, then navigate to the specific folder where it needs to go, create a subfolder for like 2019 or 2018, and then name the file in a specific way instead of it having the account number, etc. Why don't you just have Flo do that? It will automatically take the file, put it into the folder where it needs to go, and will name it appropriately. So if you ever need to find your bank statement again, you never have to search your email. Now you can just go to the specific folder where you know your bank statements or your credit card statements are stored, and they will be there and they'll be named appropriately, exactly in the format that you wanted them to be named. The same thing could apply for company documents. A lot of businesses struggle with uniformity in terms of how documents are named. And I'm sure you'd all agree with that. You know, I like to name documents in a certain way. Then a colleague of mine would like to name and save documents in their own way. And then another person has their own unique way that they think about file management. But if you have a specific process that document follows to get it into the correct system and the naming convention is set, well then we all know what happens, how it's named, where it is, and where to find it. And it makes it a lot easier for all of us going forward, and it makes it a lot easier for any new employees that come in to know, well, this is exactly how it's structured, this is exactly how things are stored, and how new folders are actually created. Okay, so we can see just under that, save email attachments to a SharePoint document library. And this applies to Teams as well. So we could save email attachments to a Teams channel, as an example, as we showed last time. Another one is get notified when a data source is modified. Maybe you've got a file that you've stored specifically in OneDrive or SharePoint, and you want to be notified when somebody goes and edits it. You could set that up. And depending on how you want to be notified, maybe you want to be notified via email, maybe you want a push notification on your phone instead, maybe you want to be notified on Teams by the bot must send you a message to say, hey Eric, this file has been modified by this person. You want to go and have a look at it, and then you can go and do that. You can see here, this even allows third-party integration into like Slack. So Microsoft has designed Flo to be open source. So anybody, any business can go and integrate their own systems into there. Microsoft has just created the platform. Anybody can go and integrate their own systems into here. So the fact that Microsoft has Teams and Slack is actually a competitor hasn't stopped them allowing this platform to be used for either, because that creates benefits to all of us. To have an open platform that is integrated. So I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago that it's integration that makes the solution really, really powerful. It's what made Microsoft Windows famous to begin with. It's what made Apple's App Store and Apple's mobile devices so famous 10 years ago when they launched the first iPhone. It was because of that integration into the apps that we wanted to use that it became a really worthwhile solution to use. Microsoft's aware of that, so this integration is really open. Managing calendars is also a pain, like sharing contacts lists. Things like, you know, if I have an Android phone, which I do, or you have an iPhone, and your calendars are not in sync. So your one calendar has specific set of items in it, your other one has another set of items. Couldn't you have them merge automatically? So if I add an item in this calendar, it must automatically be added to that calendar, and vice versa. Just use Flow to handle that flow of information between the two systems. Okay, we could get updated on news, etc. I'll leave it up to you to go have a look at some of the other things that can allow you to get ahead of your workload and leverage Flow to do that. Another thing before we go into maybe creating a flow and I show you an example, let me show you some of the templates. Okay, so I could go to home and look at those like 11 ways to actually improve your productivity. But there's also templates which both Microsoft and the community on Flow have actually created. And you can just go and use these. Instead of having to create something from scratch, you could go and search, oh, I want to do something with Dropbox, as an example. Okay, so I just search Dropbox. And here's everything we can do from Dropbox. So I want to copy files to OneDrive for Business when they're added to Dropbox. That's something quite useful to do. Maybe I would want it to be done in reverse as well. So having that kind of synchronization between two cloud providers maybe is a great way to migrate my content across. Instead of what all of us would think of doing, we go, okay, I'm going to download all of my Dropbox documents, move them into OneDrive, and have OneDrive re-upload them. You can imagine how painful that is, right? Especially if you've got a lot of content stored. Well, why don't you just use Flow to go and look at your Dropbox folder, copy the content across directly, cloud to cloud. Microsoft will connect to Dropbox, get all your files, copy them across into OneDrive, and it's done on your behalf. It handles the flow of information. This one has nothing to do with Microsoft whatsoever, but it's saving Gmail attachments to Dropbox. Now, this is something that you could use on a personal basis, maybe, because maybe you have a personal account that's with Gmail, and you wanted to store those attachments into Dropbox or OneDrive or maybe a different solution. But you can see there's a long list of things that you can do with Dropbox here. Okay, it's incredible in terms of the work that the community and Microsoft has done to make sure the integration is here. One thing that so here it'll sort by popularity. So here are the ones that are the most popular. So send myself a reminder in 10 minutes, or save email attachments to OneDrive, or get today's weather forecast, or create a button. Or this one's quite interesting. A lot of us might not want, let's say, our email attached to our phone, because that creates, I don't know, a lot of distraction. Let me put it that way. So let's say you have your email attached to your phone. Well, you get a lot of messages on your phone. Maybe you only want to know about specific messages that are really important. So this one can be set up to get a push notification when you get an email from your boss, or it could be defined, if I get an email from these specific people, I need to get a push notification on my phone. So you don't even need to have the email account added. You will get a push notification on your phone that you need to respond to something, and you can handle it appropriately then by phoning the person, etc. Okay, so sometimes that's a good way to kind of cut through the clutter that we have in email and just get notified on actions that are relevant. So ultimately, it's about relevance and making sure that that we don't get distracted in terms of the work that we need to do. Okay, so let's use one as an example. And I think the one that I'm going to use as an example, because it's the one that a lot of people, if not most people that I speak to, really want to get started with, is saving your email attachments to a specific folder in OneDrive. And so if we click on this template just to use that, I'm going to show you how this process flow works, and it'll give you a good mental understanding of how these triggers and actions fit together to make flow work. Okay, so currently it's saying, before I actually go ahead and create, it's saying, okay, this flow needs to connect to my Outlook so it can actually get my email attachments, and it needs to be able to connect to my OneDrive for Business. Now, if this was like my Dropbox account, well, I'd need to enter my Dropbox login details on this one here and my email address, whichever email address I want to use for the flow to use, I would have to enter that there. So if I wanted my personal email address, I would go and, let's say, add a new connection for my personal email address there, and I want my personal email address attached to OneDrive to store the documents there. I would configure this appropriately. Okay, so then I can go and create the flow. Okay, so now it's brought me to the flow dashboard, where we can see like the run history, so how often it ran in the last few weeks, where it's connected to my Outlook and my OneDrive, and who else has access to this, who else is owners. Now, if I add another owner, this might be like a team flow. Maybe these are actions that perform tasks for people within my team or within my department. Well, then I would go and actually add additional people. But in this case, because it's saving from my email, my own attachments, I don't need to add anybody else but myself, because I need it to be private. Okay, so I'm going to go and edit this flow to go and see, well, what is it going to do? And really, it only has two steps here. There's one trigger, and the trigger is on a new email. And let's go have a look at that and just go into that. So on a new email received in my inbox, and I can go and configure some other options. So maybe it's from a specific person. Okay, so if I type in, let's say, Alex, it's going to search Alex, and I'll say, okay, if the email comes into my inbox and it's from Alex and it has attachments, and let's say the importance is high, or I'm going to use any here just so that any email from Alex, no matter the importance, that it must have attachments. Based on that, this step being true, it's then going to perform the next step. It's going to go through every single attachment. Okay, so this actually goes and looks at, okay, well, maybe there were 5 attachments on that last email. So for every single attachment, it needs to go and create a file. And where is it going to create the file? Well, I can say which folder it needs to go into. Now, right now, the folder it's going to is just a folder called email attachments from Flow. But I can go and, let's say,
Eric, I think it's frozen. I think your screen, if you just want to reshare it.
Okay, sure. That better?
Just waiting for it to load. I can't see it yet, no. There we go. It is, wait. No, it looks frozen on my end. Oh, we can see a bit of your screen. You can see the OneDrive screen, search OneDrive, and it's got the OneDrive upload there.
Sure, okay.
Oh, I'm hearing from some of my team members, it might just be me. So continue, I think it is working.
Okay, sure. Okay, so let me go and create a new folder in my OneDrive, because maybe this is specifically where I want these email attachments from, let's say, Alex to be stored. So I can say these are, let's say, I wonder what they are. Let's say sales reports, because Alex sends me these sales reports all the time. So I'm going to have my sales reports automatically added. And let's go and add them actually into the reports, because I've got a reports folder. Let's go and add them into the reports, and we'll call this sales reports. We'll say create. Now if we go back to Flow and we choose the folder, okay, and we go into our OneDrive folder, we go to reports and we go to sales reports. Now it's going to save it into reports, sales reports, and it's going to use the same name that's from with Outlook. So the attachment's name is going to be the attachment's name. The attachment content is going to be the attachment content. So we don't want to modify that content. We want it to stay exactly as is, but maybe this name we might want to change. We don't want it to be exactly named the same way. We maybe want the attachment name with the let's say the subject next to it. So I can go and include, should be able to include the subject here. Let's just go check. There we go, subject. So I can just use the search there. So I could have the attachment name dash subject stored automatically. So for every single file, that's going to go name the file and append subject on the end. And it's going to automatically store any of those attachments that come from Alex into, let's just remove that thing because it's saying it's an error, automatically into sales reports for me. So all my sales reports will be automatically there. And I might want an action after this because otherwise I'm not going to see this. If I get this new email, I might want to be notified. So I could set up an email notification or a mobile notification. Now, obviously, I've already got that email in my inbox, but maybe I want to get a mobile notification that includes the text like, hey, Eric, Alex just added the new sales report. And then the link can just be the link to the item. So if I just search for link here, I should have from the previous step. Let's just move this up a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so here we've got the path. Okay, so the link is the path in OneDrive. So it's going to create the file and then it's going to send me a notification with exactly path of where it's stored in OneDrive, but I don't have to include that because I already know the folder it's going to be stored in. So I could just say, hey Eric, Alex just added the new sales report, and I would know where to go in my OneDrive to actually go and pick it up. Okay, so this is a relatively simple process, a relatively simple flow to go and set up. Something which might be a little more complicated. And just looking at it in terms of time, I'll show you this one quickly. Let's say we wanted to, this one here, let's actually find one that's relevant. I wanted to use there it is. There's the one I was looking for. Yeah. So let's say request manager approval for a specific file. If we look at approvals, these might be a little bit more advanced, and you can see how many different systems it needs to connect to SharePoint, to the Office 365 users. It needs to do an approval. It's connecting to my mail. I might need to change this to Outlook, and it's going to send notifications. So 5 different systems it's connecting to and integrating. And if we look at this process flow now, have a look at all the steps. So yes, I've zoomed out to make it look small, but I just want to give you a view on kind of the mind map that happens here. So if I, let's say, bring these down a little bit so we can see them all. What it does is will add the option for me in a document. So if I was working in Excel or I was working in Word, I would have the option that for that specific file, a file that I specify, maybe not all files I need an approval for, but if I generate a specific file in Excel or Word, maybe I want to start an approval automatically. I want to get approval from my manager for it. So I could set up this flow or use this template, and it will go and do all these steps to do the approval. So I would choose the specific file. It would have a button in Excel which would show up. It's then going to get the properties of that file for me. It's going to get my profile. It's going to fetch who my manager is so that it knows who to assign the approval to. Because otherwise, it's not going to know which person to assign the approval to. And then when it starts the approval, it's going to assign it to, can you see this step? It's going to assign it to the email address, which it got from this step over here. This get manager got my manager's details, including his or her email address, and Flo will automatically then plug it in this step. And then it's going to send my manager all these details to say, hi, there's an approval request from this person's name, which it's fetching. Okay, it's fetching my name. It's assigned to you. Please go and have a look at it. And then based on the response. So here's a condition underneath saying, if the response is equal to approve, or if the response is greater than, or we've got all these conditions. If the response is equal to approve, then do these steps. So it's going to inform me approved, and it's going to say, my manager has approved your request for this item with comments. If it's the other side, it's going to say, not approved as the subject. My manager's name did not approve the request for this. Okay, so here's a more of a complicated flow that if you had to build this yourself, maybe you might get a little bit stuck, but Microsoft's gone and created this on your behalf. And if you're thinking this looks complicated, I can tell you that before this, if you were to have to look at the code behind this, if you would have had to program this yourself by actually generating code, it was far more difficult to actually have done this. So having a graphical interface actually makes it 10 times easier. Okay, so really all it is about is all of us learning, well, how does Flow work? We would just need to know, okay, well, this get manager goes and fetches my manager. When I start an approval, it does this. So it's a matter of getting used to how this process flow really works. And a great resource that I'll give you while you're learning. So I spoke about the templates, and I spoke about on the home page the different solution, so like the productivity templates that you could use, the sales templates, etc. A great resource that you can use on for Teams is this one right here. So if I I want to go to the next page here. There's this resource that if you go to docs.microsoft.com/flow, okay, so docs.microsoft.com/enus/flow, you can choose where you want to start with. So taking like little bites, little baby steps into how to create these flows, because that's otherwise you might get lost. So it's great that they have these learning paths where we can go and learn about Microsoft Flow, getting started with the basics, getting to know the mobile app, etc. And then once you're happy with like the start of it, how to begin, I can then go to the intermediate lessons and expert lessons, or an admin. You want to administer this, but for all of us in general, we might want to go from beginner to intermediate to expert, because that'll give us a great foundation of, well, how can we take this automation and really use it? Okay, so that is a great resource. And then there's another great resource here at the top right. If you are stuck anywhere in Flow, the Learn gives you really nice learning path. So I'm going to actually just go to the learning path here, and there's a nice 3-hour, 11-minute lesson with 3 modules that will take you everything through automating a business process using Flow. So if we click into that, the very first one, we can look at the modules and say, okay, well, there's 58 minutes that I can set aside, which will help me to get started. Gives me an introduction to Flow, creating my first Flow, learning to use the Flow mobile app, receiving texts and email notifications, etc. Then once I'm comfortable and I've been playing with the basics, I can then go on to the more complex flows and learn how to build an approval request, similar to that more advanced flow that I showed you with the multiple steps. Creating a flow that processes an approval request, create a flow that stores documents and creates folders for you on your behalf. Build a flow that uses SQL if you want it to integrate into a database and pull data out and automatically put that data somewhere else, like into Power BI for your reporting or something like that. So once you've taken these steps, then you can go into the more advanced things and learn those more complex steps. And obviously we're here to actually help you in building those flows. So if there's a process flow and you're thinking, you know, how can I minimize the amount of paper that we're using and rather do this process digitally and automate it so that when specific emails come into my organization or specific forms are filled in by customers or clients that I automatically want specific actions to actually happen out of that, we can help you build those process flows and make sure that they're done in the most efficient and effective way for you. Okay, now I know I've given you a lot of information to chew on. I really wanted to equip you with as much information as possible around Flow and where to go to actually learn more and get started. So I hope that was useful in terms of that and in terms of getting started with Flow. Are there any questions? I mean, I'm just looking at the time now. I obviously wanted to try and spend a little bit of time on Planner. I'm thinking in terms of the session that I'd like to cover a bit of Planner next week, but I didn't want to kind of leave Flow without giving you enough information to get started. So we can cover Planner then in 2 weeks' time, because I think that will give a nice basis on Planner and helping you to effectively manage your tasks inside that. And then, yeah, we'll finish off with Power BI in that session as well. Are there any questions around Flow at this point in time? I see there's one message here. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Eric. I think, yeah, that was really insightful. I mean, I learned a few things myself. I don't have too many flows going myself, but I'd like to spend more time automating things that I do regularly. Thanks very much for your time, and tell us a little bit about Power BI and what we can look forward to there.
Absolutely. Okay, so thanks. Yeah, Power BI really is about helping you to share and showcase the data in your organization. A lot of organizations have the requirement to build reports that are efficient and effective. But I think what ends up happening, especially if a lot of these reports sit in Excel, is they create a lot of admin, because there's always got to be people, again, that spend a lot of time actually building and updating these reports on a weekly or a monthly basis to make sure that they've got accurate results. So Power BI was positioned to help organizations to visually represent data. We know as human beings that having a look at columns and rows in an Excel sheet is not the most effective way to actually see trends in how our sales data is doing, trends in how our customers, how we're engaging with customers, and maybe how we're supporting them. Having that visually represented on a chart, which is live, so no matter when I check it, whether it's the middle of the month, the end of the month, etc., is a great way to actually showcase that. As an example, when I was at Microsoft about 4 years ago, and Power BI was launched, one of the big things for me was, wow, I can actually get away from my Excel reporting, because I can tell you that the Excel reports took me almost 2 full days, because I had to put together so many reports in terms of, you know, how the adoption of Office 365 and Azure and Dynamics and Project was looking in terms of the South African markets, and send those reports to Redmond in the US. And that all had to be done via Excel. But because Excel is not that good in terms of processing a large quantity of data, it was really slow to put those pivot tables and actually set up those filters and get them going. So I had really slow Excel filters that, well, Excel documents that had to be sent out, and every single month I'd have to update them and send them out. And what I did is I ended up bringing that all over into Power BI instead, and I went from having to spend nearly 2 full business days a month doing reporting to 0. I went from 2 full business days, so 16 hours almost, of doing reporting to 0 hours a month. And how I did that was, well, I only had to build the Power BI reports once. And now my management, whenever they wanted to see the accurate results, didn't have to wait for me to update the reports at the end of the month. They could go and check any point in time during any point in time of the month. And they could go and have a look at what does South Africa look like at this point in time? How are they tracking? How is the forecast looking, etc., etc. So that helped me a lot, and it helped my management team a lot, so that I could more effectively prioritize those 16 hours that I'd now gained back to actually doing things to improve the results instead of doing things that generate the results. So in terms of obviously the admin in the Excel of having to generate the results, now I could actually do proactive things in the market to actually help to improve the results and how customers were actually dealing and working with Microsoft solutions. So that was one of the big things that I did. Yeah, some insight.
I've got actually a question. There's someone who asked a question. Is Power BI part of Teams and integrated with 365?
It is. So all of the applications that we speak about as part of the webinar series, including all of the applications that you see here in this apps list on Office 365, all of these are included. So you can see Power BI is one of them, Power Apps is one of them. Now Power BI does have a pro license, which gives you some additional capabilities outside of what's included as part of Office 365. And we'll talk about the difference between what are the pro features versus what's included with Office 365, and when would I need to look at pro, or when would I be comfortable with actually just using the built-in capabilities of Power BI. So we'll look at that next week. But yeah, it's a great question. Power BI is included, Power Apps included, Flow is included, Forms is included. All of the business application platform tools are all available to every single Office 365 subscriber.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone.
Cheers.
I'll stay online for just a couple of minutes if anybody would like to ask any questions. So don't worry about that. I'll be here. Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone.